Remember the way President Obama and congressional Republicans used to get along, back in the early days of the administration? From the day Obama was elected all the way to, let's say, yesterday. You had Obama's a socialist, Republicans are the party of no, Obama's the worst president ever, Republicans are only in it for the rich, that sort of stuff. That was before last night's D.C. version of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. The president hosting a dozen Senate Republicans to a swanky meal at a swanky Washington restaurant, and he even picked up the check, thought to be in the several thousands of dollars range. Surprised to see Obama dining with Republicans? Then this will really blow you away. Everyone says the dinner was a success and could help break the ice in D.C.
All I can say is we had a very evening that I appreciated very much. Really, you'll have to grab somebody else.
Do you think the conversations will continue?
Oh yes, sure.
I think it was constructive.
His goal is ours. We want to stop careening from crisis to crisis.
So what did they talk about? They talked about the budget and the debt and actual things that actually need to actually get done to get D.C. actually moving again.
It was very candid, it was cordial, but it was also substantive. It really was. Everybody had a chance to make the points they wanted to make. There was back and forth. There was substantive discussion about actual fiscal policy, priorities and alternatives and ideas.
And reaction from the White House?
Spoke with the president about this a little while ago, and he said that he found the dinner very constructive and very pleasant. He said that there seemed to be sincere interest in avoiding constant crisis, sincere interest expressed by the participants in the dinner.
Then today, the president had lunch at the White House with Paul Ryan and Chris Van Hollen, the top two men on the House Budget Committee. All these meals, Mayor Bloomberg would hate it. The chat described as constructive with promises to keep talking in the coming weeks. What are they talking about? Well, there's still the possibility for a grand bargain, and if it were to go through, you'd be looking at about $600 billion in new revenue that the GOP would have to swallow. They don't want to. Obama would have to go and push the idea of overhauling health and retirement programs like Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. That's the general framework of the grand bargain. Let's start with the meal itself. What does it say about Washington that we need to have a formal dinner at a fancy restaurant just to get things moving again? And are you hopeful that that'll do the trick?
Of course it'll do the trick. I mean, I said on this show well over a year ago is that I would love every Saturday morning for John Boehner and Barack Obama to go golfing together. When you socialize with one another, when you share a meal, when you share a drink, you're less likely on Monday morning to be cussing the guy out. They need to socialize more. And I think it's good for our country. And I think that, listen, I think that they've all come to the realization, I think particularly this president, who by all accounts, even Democratic allies of his, said he's not the most personable guy with the legislature. He doesn't, doesn't work the room very well. This can only be a good thing. Because I think that they all recognize...
But Tom, explain this to me. I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is the same President Obama that can fill a stadium because he's so personable. So why is it he can fill 80,000 people, but can't get along with, and from what you're telling me, with what, 10 senators?
Well, I'll tell you why, because when he's with the 10 senators, he actually has to get something done. It's much different than being in a room full of 80,000 people where you're just blathering whatever comes out of your mouth and sounds good.
He has to get something done. It's not that they're obstructionists. He has to get something done.
Dominic, listen, he is the president of the United States, okay? He sounded the horns on sequester. How's that going? The stock market keeps going up. There's no crisis in the country.
Well, it does take two to tango. I mean,
but so the point is that, but you're the leader. You need to bring the people and say, listen, let's get together. Let's go have dinner. Let's socialize.
Now, I do agree with Tom
president,
on that.
The Speaker of the House, or the budget chair, Paul Ryan, can't call the president and say, hey, POTUS, let's go to dinner tonight. That's got to come from the president. He's got to show the leadership, et cetera, et cetera. And if he did and they said no, then I would blame them. I'd be the first one. But I've always been of the opinion that work together, go out together, enjoy one another, get your families to know each other.
I just wish they had the attitude that Tom is expressing here tonight. Because to his credit, when he was on the set election night, now we know he did everything in his power, like every other Republican, to defeat Barack Obama. But the moment the election was over, Tom said, he's my president, I wish him well, and he told people not to criticize him. That's correct, right?
Still my president.
Okay,
I want him to do well.
So I do agree with him. The House Speaker really can't call the president and say, hey, President Obama, let's go have a drink, let's go have dinner for the most part. It has to come from the president. And so anything that will help I think the American people welcome, the American people embrace, and I agree with Tom. This just might be the icing on the cake to get a deal done and stop this crisis to crisis to crisis.
But my other question is, can it actually get a deal done? Yes, maybe they can come to some sort of arrangement with the Senate, but Tom, the Senate's the easier of the two bodies that the president would have to work out a grand bargain with. Even if the Senate comes along and agrees to share in some of the pain here politically, are you confident that they could sell it to the House?
I am, because I think that Boehner would like to get deals done. I think Boehner's a guy who respects the institutions, respects the art of the compromises, and realized that we need to compromise.
Respects it enough to put his neck on the line if he needs.
Listen, he did the last time when 2 days after the election he says, the president won, we're going to have more revenues. Now, he had to go fight a bunch of the crazies within the within his caucus, but he did it. They increased revenues. So I think that Boehner, recognizes that, listen, and plus also I think the optics of it all is if the president and the Senate are standing there together, and particularly Senate Republicans have said, we have a deal, it's going to be very hard for the House not to go along with it, because then they will be looked upon as obstructionists.
You notice the president didn't have lunch today with John Boehner. He had lunch today with Paul Ryan.
Right.
There's a method to that madness, right?
Yes, I think the president is picking and choosing to try and figure out which among the caucus that he can cut a deal with.
I disagree with you. I think that he knows he can cut a deal with Boehner. The problem is the Ryan faction, the Cantor faction, that he needs to go warm over and make them comfortable that this is the right thing to do.
But Tom, if we're being honest, the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter what Boehner says. Because Boehner can't close the deal.
Dominic,
and anybody that can't close the deal, it's a waste of time.
But that's why I think it was wise to go after Paul Ryan.
Exactly.
Because if you can convert Paul Ryan, Boehner will come along.
Well, but I think Boehner's already there. But the point is we say this about Boehner, he was reelected speaker.
But
the point is...
Right. With how many slots saying, if you don't do this, we'll yank the rug from under you?
Here's how it went, is that the president and Boehner had a conversation because the president's not going to talk to House members without talking to the leadership first. Boehner said, listen, me and you don't have an issue here. We can work stuff out. You got to go to some of my other members and bring them along.
No,
call
Boehner
them.
said, I'm not cutting a deal anymore with the president. In other words, because you used the word the nuts yourself. I'm glad you said it.
Yeah.
I didn't have to say the nuts, some of the nuts in the caucus.
Right.
And so if
some of the nuts. You have a lot of nuts in your caucus. There are nuts everywhere.
Okay, but what seems
There are
to me,
nuts around this table, but that's okay.
we need some everybody at the same. You know what? Somebody get us a meal here. Maybe that's the whole secret. If we share a meal, a couple of happy meals.
A couple of happy meals would
forget
work.
that. A few steaks.
I'd rather have a happy meal.
a happy meal.
I'd rather eat McDonald's than have some nice steak.
Come on.
If the president called me and said, Tom, where do you want to go? Let's go to McDonald's. Let's grab a hockey game and go to McDonald's.
And Obama picks up the
A
check.
hockey
That's
game
perfect.
with this president.
Yeah, of course. What's wrong with that? Look,
nothing.
I mean, Simmons scored a goal against the Rangers the other night. Was that a? Did you bring race into the show?
Wait,
23.
what are you talking about race?
Well, when you
Who's
said
Simmons?
Obama wouldn't go to a hockey
who's
game.
Simmons?
Well,
I don't know who Simmons is.
He's
An
a
African
hockey
American player for the Flyers.
Oh, an African American
Well, you
player.
brought in Obama wouldn't go to a hockey game. Why did you say that?
The president seems to like basketball.
Okay.
Oh, so there you
baseball,
go.
and
Okay.
football.
I'm throwing the multicolored flag in on this one. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to turn to the issue of guns. Not the panel personally, the subject, the political issue. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords back in Tucson pushing for better background checks on gun purchases. There was an actual vote in Congress today. We're going to give you the latest on that coming up.